Okay, so I am sharing my screen now for week 3 of Composition 1. And um, what I would like to do today, since there's only one of us joining, is just use this recording to help us complete our work online for this rest of this week. So some of the things I do want us to go back to is look at week 2. We had to complete some readings. So we talked about the should everyone go to college. We talked about that last week in class, but then we also had a submission of our simple instructions 2, which I have not graded yet. So I'm sorry about that. We have discussed rhetorical context and a little brief amount, but I will just give us a refresher about that. The idea is that every piece has a purpose, and we have to train ourselves to think about what it is we are trying to do. And that's what the rhetorical contexts do. And we talked about this a little bit last week. But so every piece of writing has a purpose, whether it's a note that we're writing to a family member while we're gone, an argument paper, a letter to the editor, a love note, whatever. They all have a purpose and an audience. They all have a particular genre, which means that, like a letter, we have certain expectations. An argument paper has certain expectations. We learn how to write 5-paragraph essays in high school for college entrance exams and ACT and SAT essays. We learn how to do lab reports. We learn how to do resumes and cover letters and all sorts of things like that. So those are different genres, and there's expectations built into each of them. Sometimes we have a bias or a stance. We might really like this topic. You can tell, if we're sending an angry text to somebody, there's certain things that we do. Do we use emojis or not in an angry one, or what? Like, how do we choose these things, and how does that convey our feelings? Like, I was told that from my 14-year-old that because I use punctuation in my texts, that it sounds like I'm angry. No, that's just like normal writing because I'm old. Then, of course, the medium, which is how we're delivering it. So right now, this class is being delivered online through a video. That's a different way than if I was meeting you face to face. Are we reading something? Is it online? We know that our brains interact with text and, let's say text, I guess, video and words differently with a paper than on the screen. So we pick up on different things, and we pay attention differently. And then how is it all laid out? So like this book has a specific layout. I lay out my class in Blackboard in a specific way. And these are all intentional, conscious decisions, or at least they should be. But a lot of times we do it just because that's the way we've always done it. But we should think about how we are doing things. So our reading talks a lot about these various things, and I'm not going to go through all these, but you can go back and look at them in this in more detail if you would like. But we'll go back and look at what we were doing for week 3. I do have the link up here that I posted yesterday, and I'm sorry it was short notice yesterday for the online class meeting, but I just thought it'd be better to meet and talk about things. So for this week, we are reading the essay From Attitude to Aptitude, and this, I think, is a great essay. I don't know if you've already read it, Madison, and I won't put you on the spot, but it's fairly long, and it comes from a textbook for people who are studying the teaching of writing. It's called What is College Level Writing? And so I think this is a great paper for us to look at. It is long, and there's a lot of stuff that you might not really know, and that's okay because it's the genre and there's expectations. You are not the intended audience. So when we look at words like syntactic maturity and school children and adult syntax, the use of the words and language and all that stuff, that's what it's looking at. So what I like about this paper is that this is a college writing instructor who generally teaches graduate students. So people that are getting their master's and doctorates in teaching of writing, so they can be writing teachers. So he's talking about what is important in college writing. And this is like a big debate, right? And you'll hear, different English teachers always disagree. But what I like about this is that the author provides 3 examples of college writing, and he breaks them down and says what makes them good and what makes them not so good. And he says, we can predict how well they're going to do. I don't really know. There I have some problems with making that prediction, but also he does talk about strengths and weaknesses and what writing should do. So I would look at how, if you're having trouble following this, I would skim and look at how he talks about these essays, particularly, starting when he starts talking about these attitudes. So this is page 9, but if you go down a little bit further, he has another attitude that he discusses, student writing, where he talks about this. So page 187 here, but page 10 in the PDF. So look at this essay where he analyzes this argument essay, The Right to Pray, and then breaks it down and says, what is wrong with it? Keep note, he says this is not an assignment I would give. So it's an example from somewhere else. So he breaks it down and talks about why this is not good college level writing. So that's an important thing for us to consider. And then right here is, I think, the whole main idea that he's trying to make. What is college level writing? And he breaks it down into these 5 points. So we will talk about this a little bit more on when we're in person next week, on week 4. So I think this will be an interesting essay for you to look at, because we're often just told to write. We're not really told the theories about what's happening with us as we write or what people are looking for. We're just like, well, tell me what I need to do to get a good grade, because that's how we're used to writing. But what does writing convey when it's not just about a grade, but what we're actually trying to do? So there's a discussion board for this that is due Sunday night. Again, you just click it and you click on create thread, and the questions will be up here and you'll be able to go through all that. So we'll have that due. I gotta go back, I'm sorry. And then after that, you can watch this little video that I made. Academic context is another lesson. And then I'd said we were going to do interviews today, but because of snow day, we can't do that. So we might not be able to do this you say, I say essay the way I would like to do it. So we might just make it more of a personal narrative just to get it done. I do think the interview questions are valuable, but for the sake of time, we probably won't be able to do it. So instead, what we're going to do is discussion 6, which is a personal narrative draft. And we'll make this into the UCSA. And if we have time on next Thursday for week 4, maybe we'll try to do the interviews, but I do want us to get into these bigger papers, but I also want us to do some writing. So for this discussion board, we're going to take what we talked about last week, which was picking a topic, family tradition, a favorite holiday, a favorite meal, or some memorable experience. And I want you to answer these questions. You don't have to write it as an essay. You can do bullet points if you really want to, but this will eventually become some sort of narrative or a story. So you'll think about, well, what event was it? Why does it matter? So what are you picking? Why and how does this matter to you? Tell us something more about it. Like, what's the context? What's the background? When did it first start or happen, if it's a tradition, especially? That's really what that question is looking at. How has this changed or evolved over time, the tradition or the holiday? Maybe even the favorite meal. Maybe it's a, your Super Bowl party or whatever, and everybody always brings specific things. For the memorable experience, you're gonna have to alter these questions a little bit, thinking about maybe your perception of how this experience has changed over time. So how long ago was it? When did you experience it? So you're interrogating yourself. and telling us who was in there, so we can start thinking about, well, what matters to you and how are we going to convey the significance of this to other people? Because that's what narratives do, is they tell us a story, but also have something that is a takeaway for the readers. Because it's not just, hey, I went to Chili's one day and I got nachos. It was good. That's not a narrative. A narrative is, I went to Chili's and I was really impatient because I was hangry and I was mean to my waitress, but then I got my nachos and I realized, wait a minute, after I ate a little bit, that I was a jerk and that I had worked in the food service before, and I became the type of customer I hated. So I apologized to my waitress and gave her a good tip. And she said that she really appreciated that apology because most people don't ever do that. They just walk away and are entitled. So it challenged me to think about changing my perception of how I treat others. That becomes a narrative because there's a lesson to it. And that never happened. So that's what we're looking at, is starting the foundation of pre-writing. We are just taking notes, getting an idea out there so we can take it and make something bigger and better out of it. But we have to have our ideas first. So that is what we are doing for this week. Both things will all be due Sunday. Are there any questions, Madison?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, hopefully that's all straightforward. If you do have questions, email me, and that goes for the rest of the class who is watching. And I'm getting notes that, again, my internet is unstable. So hopefully I am not freezing or my voice going out. But if there are questions about that, please let me know as well. Last thing I will do is talk about what we're doing for next week. So by Sunday, we have that reading, and then discussion boards for attitude to aptitude and for the narrative. For week 4, we have some more reading. So this will be done by Thursday. I would like you to read Determining Audience and Purpose and read about how to write a summary, and then read this essay, Consider the Lobster by David Foster Wallace. So we have Determining Audience and Purpose right here. You can click that. It's going to take us to our textbook. And you can read about this. It's not terribly long, but you want to go through and click to purpose, appealing to audience. You don't need to do any of these exercises. These are interesting, but every time I've tried to do them in class, they've bombed. So I won't make you do these in class, but these are interesting. Tone, point of view. So those are the main things. And then we're not going to worry about that. So those 4 chapters, there's a video on the rhetorical situation if you really want to think about this more. Again, rhetorical context is what we've already talked about. I need to move this up. I'm sorry. Actually, I'll just keep this down here. So then we got to read this essay, Consider the Lobster by David Foster Wallace. It's a PDF. I will warn you, it is a strange, weird essay. I am not expecting anybody to read this and get it right away, to be able to follow it all the way, because it's just different. David Foster Wallace was a different type of writer. And what this is just kind of an exercise in how do we work with a piece of writing that's confusing, that is not in the genre we're expecting it to be. This is supposed to be a review of the Maine Lobster Festival, but it doesn't necessarily read like a review. And it comes in this section from Gourmet Magazine called Field Notes, meaning somebody went out and experienced something. So we'll read this essay and you'll see that there's a lot of footnotes throughout here. And the footnotes just get longer and longer, like insanely long. And there's comments throughout this. He says at one point, my editors are probably going to take this out, things like that. So it's very interesting for us to look at this piece and try to understand it. And that's really all I want you to do. See what he's doing, try to understand, consider the lobster, and we will talk about this in class. But I do want you to just answer these questions in class. We'll do this as a discussion board. Is it a good review or not? Why not? What do you think he's trying to do if it's not a review? How's this essay unlike anything you've read before? What do you think the actual purpose is? And who is his audience? He actually does address the audience at the very end. When he's asking these questions, he says it. I think in this question, or somewhere in these paragraphs in the last page, he asks these questions to the audience, and he defines, it says, you as readers of this who value these things. And that, I think, is really interesting because he does speak directly to the reader. And that's something that we're told not to do in our writing. So we'll complete this in class, and I'm not expecting us to have all the answers, because nobody really knows, right? That's why we get to discuss these things. Then we'll watch these little videos. You can watch these videos before class if you want, if you're like really bored, but you'll get to see a little bit more. We'll learn some more about who David Foster Wallace was. And then I do have some video lessons up. You don't have to watch those before class. But then there's a reflection that we'll do after class, where we have some readings. We do have another essay, Don't Blame the Eater, that you have to read. This is short. So it's incredibly short. So definitely read this after class. Sorry. So we'll read this. This week's all about food. There is a discussion right here. So you'll need to read this before you actually read the do this reflection, because I do mention it. And there's some fun exercises to do in the discussion board when we talk about food. But then I'm also asking you to submit a summary. So there's a lesson on summarizing a text right here from our textbook. And this actually uses consider the lobster, but we're not going to summarize that. But it talks about what we need to do to summarize a text, main points, and I don't think it really has much else to it. But we'll do our best for the summary. Summary will also be due Sunday night. And that is kind of where we are. I just want to see what we can do, what we understand, so we can grow and become better thinkers and writers. So that is this week. Do you have any questions, Madison?
No.
Okay. I'm going to stop recording because that's enough for everybody. And I will share this with the class. I'm going to stop sharing as well, because I got to do that to stop recording. So everybody else who wasn't able to make it, please watch this video and email me the questions, and I will see you next Thursday. Thank you.